Hello everyone. My name is Adrian, and what I'm about to share with you today happened to me just 3 nights ago. Something so terrifying, so unbelievable, that I've been sitting in my car for the past hour, trying to work up the courage to even record this. The woods behind my house have rules, ancient rules that have been passed down for generations, and 3 nights ago, I broke every single one of them. What you're about to hear will change how you see forests forever, how you understand darkness, and the things that have been watching us, waiting for us, since the beginning of time. But before I dive into this nightmare, I can see that 85% of you are watching without subscribing. So please, hit that subscribe button right now, smash the like button, and ring that notification bell. Your support means everything to me, especially after what I've been through. Also, comment below and let me know what time you're watching this. And if you have your own paranormal experiences, please share them. I read every single comment, and after what happened to me, I believe every story. Now, let me take you back to where this all began, back to the small mountain town of Millbrook, British Columbia, where nothing ever happens, or so everyone thought. I've lived in Millbrook my entire life, 23 years in the same house, on the same street, at the very edge of town. My house sits like a sentinel, right where civilization ends and the wild begins. Behind my backyard, there's an old wooden fence, painted white once upon a time, now withered gray and rotting. And beyond that fence lies the most beautiful and most terrifying forest you can imagine. Growing up, my grandmother Clara was everything to me. She lived with us after my grandfather passed, and she had this way of making even the most ordinary day feel magical. Clara had these piercing blue eyes that seemed to see right through you, and hands that were always cold, no matter what season it was. She spent most of her time on the front porch, in that old rocking chair that creaked with every movement, watching the tree line, always watching. Clara wasn't just my grandmother. She was Millbrook's unofficial keeper of secrets, the one person who remembered the old ways, the old stories, the old warnings that most folks had forgotten. She had lived in this town for over 70 years, had seen things that would make your blood run cold, and she made damn sure I knew about every single one of them. It was Clara who first told me about the rules. I was maybe 7 years old, had just moved into the bedroom that faced the backyard, the bedroom that looked directly out at those woods. I remember waking up one night, seeing lights dancing between the trees, beautiful, ethereal lights that seemed to pulse with their own heartbeat. I ran downstairs to tell Clara about the pretty lights, excited, thinking she'd want to see them too. But when I found her, she was already awake, standing at the kitchen window, staring out at those same lights, her face pale as moonlight, her hands gripping the windowsill so tight her knuckles were white. She turned to me, and for the first time in my young life, I saw fear in Clara's eyes, real, genuine terror. She knelt down, took my small hands in her cold ones, and spoke in a voice barely above a whisper. "Adrian, my sweet boy, you must never, ever go toward those lights, and you must never tell anyone else about them. Promise me. Promise your grandmother right now." I promised, but I wanted to know why. Clara looked toward the woods one more time, then led me to the living room. She sat me down on her lap in that creaky rocking chair, and began to tell me stories that would haunt my dreams for years to come. She told me that the woods had been there long before Millbrook, long before the first European settlers arrived. The indigenous people who lived here centuries ago, they had a name for this place, a name that meant where the spirits feed. They had rules about the forest, sacred laws that were never, ever to be broken. When the first settlers came to this valley in 1847, they ignored the warnings. They thought the native stories were just superstition, ignorant beliefs of a primitive people. They were so very wrong. Of the original 43 families that settled here, only 12 survived the first winter. The others, they simply vanished. Their homes were found empty, doors wide open, meals still warm on the table, but the people gone without a trace. Clara rocked slowly as she spoke, her voice taking on a hypnotic rhythm. She told me that the survivors, my ancestors among them, they learned to listen. They learned to respect the old ways, to follow the rules that kept them safe, rules that had been written in blood, paid for with lives. passed down through whispered warnings from one generation to the next. And then, Clara made me memorize them, made me repeat them back to her every single day until they were burned into my memory like brands. 6 rules, 6 sacred laws that had kept our family alive for over a century. Rule number 1. Never enter the woods after sunset. When darkness falls, the forest belongs to them, the ancient ones who were here first, who have been waiting in the shadows, hungry, patient, eternal. Rule number 2. Never follow the lights. No matter how beautiful they appear, no matter how much they seem to call your name, they are not there to guide you home. They are there to lead you astray, to lead you deeper, to lead you to them. Rule number 3. If you hear your name being called from within the trees, never answer. Never acknowledge that you've heard. And whatever you do, never, ever look back. Because once they know you can hear them, once they know you're listening, they'll never stop calling. Rule number 4. Never take anything from a forest. Not a flower, not a pretty stone, not even a fallen branch or leaf. Everything in those woods belongs to them. And they remember every single thing that's taken. They keep track, they keep score, and eventually, they collect what's owed. Rule number 5. If you see the pale figure standing among the trees, close your eyes immediately. Count slowly to 10. Then turn around and walk away. Never run. Running triggers their hunting instinct. Never make eye contact. Their gaze can trap your soul. And never, under any circumstances, listen to what they're saying. And the final rule. Rule number 6, the most important one of all. If you break any of these rules, you must confess your transgression to the forest before the next sunset. You must go to the edge of the woods, speak your sin aloud, and beg for forgiveness. Because if you don't, if the sun sets on your broken promise, they will come to collect what you owe. And the debt is always your life. For 16 years, I followed these rules without question. I respected the boundaries. I feared the woods, and in return, they left me alone. I grew up, went to school, started working at the Millbrook Herald as a junior reporter, living a quiet, normal life in our quiet, normal town. The rules became second nature, as automatic as breathing, as natural as my heartbeat. But then, Clara died. It was sudden, a heart attack in her sleep. She was 84 years old and had been healthy as a horse right up until the end. I found her that morning, still in her rocking chair on the porch, her eyes open, staring at the tree line, as if she had been keeping watch right up until her final breath. The funeral was small, just family and a few old-timers who remembered Clara from the early days. As we lowered her casket into the ground, I swore I could hear whispers coming from the direction of the woods, soft, urgent whispers in a language I didn't recognize. But when I looked around, no one else seemed to notice. That night, for the first time since I was 7 years old, I saw the lights again. I was lying in bed, unable to sleep, missing Clara's presence in the house, when something made me look toward my bedroom window. There they were, dancing between the trees, more beautiful than I remembered, more vibrant, more alive. They pulsed with colors that didn't have names, blues that were deeper than oceans, greens that were more vivid than spring, whites that were purer than fresh snow. I sat up in bed, transfixed, remembering Clara's warnings, but unable to look away. The lights seemed different somehow, more purposeful, more directed, as if they were performing just for me. As I watched, they began to move in patterns, forming shapes, almost like they were trying to communicate. That's when I heard it, faint at first, barely audible above the sound of my own heartbeat, my name, whispered on the wind, carried from the depths of the forest. Adrian. It was soft, melodious, like a lullaby from childhood. Adrian, we've been waiting. I jerked back from the window, Clara's voice echoing in my memory. Rule number 3, never answer when they call your name. I forced myself to turn away, to pull the curtains closed, to ignore the whispers that continued throughout the night. But ignoring them was easier said than done. The next evening, I found myself drawn to the backyard, standing at the fence, staring into the woods. The lights were there again, brighter than before, and the whispers had grown stronger, more insistent. I could make out actual words now. Come home. Adrian, come back to where you belong. I gripped the fence post, knuckles white, fighting the urge to open that gate, to step across the threshold, to see what waited for me in the dancing lights. But Clara's training held. I turned away, went back inside, locked the door. This went on for weeks. Every night, the same routine, the same temptation, the same struggle. The lights grew brighter, the voices clearer, and my resistance grew weaker. I started researching, diving into the archives at the Herald, looking through old newspapers, census records, anything I could find about the history of our woods. What I discovered made my blood run cold. The disappearances had been happening for over a century, regular as clockwork. Every few years, someone would vanish. Always the same pattern. They would be seen heading toward the forest, drawn by something they couldn't explain. And then nothing, no trace, no body, no evidence of what had happened. But there was something else, something that made my hands shake as I read through the old reports. Every disappearance was preceded by sightings of strange lights in the woods. Beautiful, hypnotic lights that appeared in the weeks leading up to each vanishing. And every person who reported seeing these lights eventually disappeared themselves. I dug deeper, going back through decades of records, and found a pattern that chilled me to the bone. The disappearances came in cycles, roughly every 20 to 25 years, as if whatever lived in those woods had to feed, had to collect, on some kind of supernatural schedule. The last cycle had been 23 years ago, right around the time I was born, and according to my calculations, we were due for another one, so I tried to push these thoughts from my mind, told myself I was just being paranoid, grieving Clara's death and seeing patterns where none existed. But deep down, I knew the truth. The lights weren't random. They weren't natural phenomena. They were hunting, and I was the prey. The whispers grew stronger each night, more personal, more intimate. They spoke of things only I would know, childhood memories, secret fears, private dreams. How could they know these things? How could voices from the forest know the most intimate details of my life? We know you. Adrian, we've always known you. We've been watching you grow, waiting for you to be ready, waiting for Clara to let go. That's when it hit me. Clara, my grandmother, the woman who had taught me the rules, who had protected me my entire life. What if she hadn't just been protecting me? What if she had been preparing me, grooming me, keeping me safe until it was time? I confronted this terrible possibility one night, standing at my fence, staring into those hypnotic lights. What do you want from me? I whispered into the darkness, immediately regretting the words. Rule number 3, never answer when they call. The response was immediate and terrifying. We want you to come home, Adrian, to take your place, to fulfill your purpose. Clara has prepared you well, taught you the rules, made you strong, made you worthy. The voice was closer now, so close I could feel breath on my neck. But when I turned around, nothing. Just empty yard, just silent night. Your family has served us for generations. Adrian, your great-great-grandmother, your great-grandmother, your grandmother, all have paid their debts, all have kept the bargains, and now it's your turn. I ran back to the house, slamming the door, turning every lock, but I could still hear them, still feel their presence, pressing against the walls, seeping through the cracks, filling my home with whispers and shadows. That night, I dreamed of Clara, but she wasn't the grandmother I remembered. In my dream, she was young, beautiful, standing at the edge of the woods, her hand extended toward something in the darkness. She turned to look at me, and her eyes were completely black, endless, like staring into deep water at midnight. It's time, Adrian, she said, her voice echoing strangely. Time to keep the promise, time to pay the price, time to come home. I woke screaming, drenched in sweat, my heart pounding like a drum. But the dream felt so real, so vivid. I could still smell the forest air, still feel the cold touch of something brushing against my skin. The next day at work was torture. I couldn't concentrate, couldn't focus on anything except the approaching sunset. My colleague Juniper noticed my distress. She's worked at the Herald for 15 years, seen all kinds of strange stories come through our small-town newspaper. She pulled me aside during lunch break, her kind brown eyes filled with concern. Adrian, you look terrible. When's the last time you actually slept? I mean really slept. I wanted to tell her everything, about the lights, the voices, The dreams, the terrible realization that my family might be connected to whatever lived in those woods. But how could I? How do you tell someone that you think your dead grandmother made some kind of supernatural bargain? That creatures from the forest have been calling your name? That you might be going insane? Just work stress. I lied, forcing a smile. You know how it is, deadlines, bills, life. Juniper didn't buy it. I could see it in her eyes, but she didn't push. She just placed a gentle hand on my shoulder. Adrian, I've lived in Millbrook my whole life, and I've seen things, strange things, things that can't be explained. If something is bothering you, something unusual, you can talk to me. I won't judge, and I won't think you're crazy. For a moment, I almost told her, almost unburdened myself of the terrible weight I'd been carrying. But then I remembered the pattern, the cycle of disappearances, worth talking about it, acknowledging it, made it real, made it stronger. Thanks, Juniper. I appreciate it, but I'm fine, really. She squeezed my shoulder, her expression sad, knowing. Just be careful. These mountains, this place, it has its own rules, its own dangers, and sometimes the old stories, the old warnings, they exist for a reason. If she only knew how right she was. That evening, I stood at my fence longer than usual. The lights were more active tonight, dancing, swirling, forming complex patterns that hurt to look at directly. The whispers had become a chorus, dozens of voices, maybe hundreds, all calling my name, all begging me to join them. Adrian, sweet Adrian, your time of preparation is over. Clara can no longer protect you, can no longer delay the inevitable. Come to us. Come home. Come to where you've always belonged. I found myself walking toward the gate, my hand reaching for the rusty latch. Everything Clara had taught me, everything I believed about safety and boundaries, it all seemed so foolish now, so limiting. The voices were so beautiful, so welcoming, promising belonging, promising purpose, promising home. My fingers touched the latch. A sudden gust of wind slammed the gate shut, nearly taking my fingers off. I jerked back, heart pounding, and that's when I saw her, standing just inside the tree line, barely visible in the ethereal glow of the dancing lights. She was pale, impossibly pale. Her skin seemed to glow with its own inner radiance. Her hair was long flowing, dark as midnight, moving in a wind I couldn't feel. Her dress, if you could call it that, seemed to be woven from shadows and starlight, constantly shifting, constantly changing. This was her, the pale figure from rule number 5. I should have closed my eyes, should have counted to 10, should have walked away. But I couldn't. She was the most beautiful and most terrifying thing I had ever seen. She raised her hand, beckoning, and when she spoke, her voice was like music, like the sound of wind through autumn leaves, like water over stones, like everything beautiful and terrible in the world. Adrian, dear Adrian, we meet at last. I am Lireleth, keeper of the forest, guardian of the ancient ways. Clara spoke of you often. She was so proud, so excited for this moment. My throat was dry, my hand shaking, but somehow, I found my voice. Clara, my grandmother, she's dead. Lireleth smiled, and in that smile, I saw eternity. I saw beauty beyond human comprehension. I saw something that made my soul ache with longing. Death is a human concept. Adrian, Clara is more alive now than she ever was in that fragile mortal shell. She is here, with us, with me, waiting for you to join our eternal family. Behind her, other figures began to emerge from the darkness, dozens of them, all pale, all beautiful, all wrong. Men, women, children, all with that same ethereal glow, all with those same black, endless eyes. Who are you? I whispered, though part of me already knew the answer. We are the first ones. Adrian, we were here when the world was young, when the forests covered everything, when humans were nothing but whispers in the mind of creation. We are the guardians, the keepers, the collectors of debts. She gestured to the figures behind her. These are your neighbors. Adrian, your friends, your family, all those who have come home over the years, all those who have found their true purpose, their eternal belonging. I recognized some of the faces, people from old photographs in the Herald archives, missing hikers, vanished campers, locals who had disappeared over the decades. They all looked exactly as they had when they vanished, unchanged, preserved, eternal. My father. I breathed, remembering the man who had left when I was 5, who everyone said had abandoned us. Ah, yes, Marcus. Lyrilleth's smile widened. He fought so hard at first, so resistant, so human, but in the end he understood. He embraced his destiny. Would you like to see him? Before I could answer, another figure stepped forward from the group, and my heart nearly stopped. It was him, my father, looking exactly as I remembered, not a day older. His dark hair still thick, his face still young, but his eyes were those same black pools, endless empty. Adrian, my son. His voice was the same, but hollow, echoing, like an echo of an echo. I've been waiting for you. We all have. This is where we belong, where our family has always belonged. I wanted to run. Every instinct screamed at me to turn and flee, but my feet seemed rooted to the ground. My father who I thought had abandoned us, had been taken, given to these creatures, and now, Clara made the bargain when I was young. He continued, his black eyes never leaving mine, promised me to them in exchange for protection, for prosperity, for keeping the rest of the family safe. It's an old agreement. Adrian, older than the town, older than memory. Lyrilleth nodded, her pale hand resting on my father's shoulder. Every generation, one must be given, one must join us, to maintain the balance, to honor the ancient contracts. Clara served as guardian, as recruiter, as the keeper of the bloodline, until her death released you from her protection. The terrible truth was becoming clear. Clara hadn't been protecting me from these creatures. She had been preparing me for them, keeping me safe and healthy and whole until it was time to fulfill the family obligation. The choice is yours. Adrian, Lyrilleth said, her voice like honey, like poison, like both. You can come willingly, retain your memories, your personality, your essence, become one of us while remaining yourself, or... She gestured toward the other figures, and I noticed for the first time how empty their eyes were, how vacant their expressions. Or we can take you, as we have taken so many others, and you will become nothing but a shell, a shadow, a pale reflection of what you once were. Around the clearing, I could see more figures emerging, hundreds of them, thousands, all the missing people from decades past, all the souls claimed by the forest, all the debts collected over the years. I thought of rule number 6, the most important rule of all. If you break the others, confess before sunset, or they will come to collect. I had already broken multiple rules. I had listened to them call my name. I had looked at the pale figure. I had acknowledged their existence. I had answered when they spoke. But there was still time. The sun was still visible through the trees. I could still try. I could still attempt to invoke the old protections. I need to think. I said, my voice barely a whisper. The rules. Clara's rules. I should be able to confess, to ask for forgiveness. Lyrilleth tilted her head, studying me with those endless black eyes, and for just a moment, I saw something that might have been amusement. The rules, yes. Clara taught you well, but did she tell you the truth about those rules, Adrian, or did she tell you only what you needed to know, to keep you safe, to keep you pure, until the time was right? My blood turned to ice. The rules were never meant to protect you forever, Adrian. They were meant to prepare you, to make you worthy, to ensure that when the time came, you would be strong enough, pure enough, untainted enough to serve your purpose. She took a step closer to the fence, and I could feel the power radiating from her. Ancient, primal, unstoppable. Clara was one of us. Adrian had been for decades, the bargains, the stories, the careful cultivation of fear and respect, all designed to guide you to this moment, to ensure you would be ready when we called. The world spun around me. Everything I thought I knew, everything I believed about my family, about Clara, about the rules, it was all a lie, or at least not the whole truth. Clara loved you in her way, but love among our kind is different, deeper, eternal. She wanted you to join us willingly, to be with your father, to be with her, to be complete. I staggered backward, my mind reeling, trying to process this revelation. Clara, my beloved grandmother, had been one of them, had been preparing me my entire life for this moment, for this choice. Where is she? I asked, though I dreaded the answer. Lireleth smiled and gestured toward the forest. Another figure emerged, graceful, glowing, beautiful, and heartbreakingly familiar. "Hello, my dear boy." Clara's voice, but wrong, echoing hollow. "I'm so sorry for the deception, but it was necessary. You had to be kept safe, kept innocent, until you were old enough to make the choice." She looked exactly as I remembered, but pale, ethereal. Her eyes those same endless black pools. She moved with inhuman grace, floating rather than walking, and when she smiled, I saw eternity in that expression. "The rules I taught you, Adrian, they were real. They did protect you. But they were also preparation training, making sure you would be strong enough, worthy enough, when the time came to join us." I felt like I was drowning, suffocating under the weight of this revelation. Everything my entire life had been leading to this moment, this choice, this transformation. "I don't understand," I whispered, though part of me was beginning to. Clara, or the thing that had been Clara, floated closer to the fence. "Our kind, we need fresh blood, young souls, to maintain our strength, to continue our existence. But not just any souls, Adrian. Only those who are pure, untainted by too much contact with our realm. Only those who have been properly prepared." She reached out her hand, and I could see it now. The same pale glow, the same ethereal beauty, the same terrible wrongness. The rules kept you safe from casual contact, from accidental transformation, from becoming one of the empty ones, the mindless servants who wandered these woods. They ensured that when the time came, you would retain your consciousness, your memories, yourself. Behind her, my father nodded, his hollow eyes reflecting understanding. "It's not a curse, Adrian. It's a gift, immortality, power, belonging to something greater than human existence. Clara prepared you for this honor, this transformation, this homecoming." I looked at them all, these beautiful, terrible creatures, my family, my neighbors, my friends, all transformed, all claiming this was better, all insisting this was home. What if I refuse? I asked, though I suspected I already knew the answer. Lireleth's smile never wavered. "Then we take you anyway, but without the preparation, without the protection of the rules. You become like the others, the empty ones, the shells who serve without thought, without memory, without self." Around the clearing, I could see them now, the empty ones, figures that barely looked human anymore, shambling, vacant, lost. These were the people who had been taken by force, who had resisted, who had paid the ultimate price. The choice is always yours, Adrian, but the outcome is inevitable. You will join us tonight. The only question is whether you retain who you are, or become nothing more than a shadow. I stood at that fence, staring at my transformed family, at the creatures who claimed to love me, at the choice that wasn't really a choice at all. The sun was sinking toward the horizon. Time was running out, and I had to decide: retain myself and join them willingly, or resist and become one of the mindless servants shambling through the forest. I thought about my life, my quiet existence in Millbrook, my job at the Herald, my friends like Juniper, everything normal and human that I would be leaving behind. But then I looked at Clara, at my father, at the family that had been waiting for me my entire life. "If I come with you," I said slowly, "if I choose this, what happens to the others, to the people in town, to Juniper?" Claire's expression softened, showing just a hint of the grandmother I remembered. "They continue their lives. Adrian, ignorant and safe, protected by the same bargains that have kept this town peaceful for over a century. Your sacrifice, your transformation, it maintains the balance, keeps them secure. And if there are others like me, with the same bloodline, then in 20 or 30 years, when the time is right, one of us will guide them home as well. The cycle continues, as it always has, as it always must." I closed my eyes, feeling the weight of generations, the burden of heredity, the inevitability of destiny. When I opened them again, Lireleth was directly in front of me, separated only by the thin wooden slats of the fence. "Choose, Adrian. The sun is almost gone, and your window of opportunity is closing. Come with us willingly, or be taken by force, but choose." I looked at the sun, barely visible now through the trees. Maybe minutes left before full darkness, before the window closed forever. I thought about running, about trying to escape. But where would I go? How far could I get? And what would happen to the town, to Juniper, to everyone I cared about if I disrupted the ancient balance? Will it hurt? I asked, hating how small my voice sounded. No more than birth. Lireleth replied, no more than any transformation. There will be pain, but it will pass. And what comes after? What comes after is beautiful beyond imagination. I took a deep breath, looked one last time at my house, at the normal human life I was about to leave behind, at the fence that had separated safety from danger for my entire existence, and made my choice. I opened the gate. The moment I stepped across the threshold, everything changed. The air grew thick, heavy, filled with whispers and languages that predated human speech. The lights that had seemed so beautiful from a distance, they swarmed around me now, and I could see what they really were, eyes, thousands of glowing eyes, watching, studying, welcoming. Lireleth smiled, her terrible, beautiful smile, and took my hand. Her touch was ice and fire, burning cold that spread up my arm like frostbite, but somehow, it didn't hurt. It felt like coming alive, like waking up from a dream I hadn't realized I was having. Welcome home, Adrian, she whispered, and I could hear the genuine joy in her voice, the love, the belonging. Welcome to where you've always belonged. She led me deeper into the woods, past trees that seemed to bend and bow as we passed, past shadows that moved independently of their sources, past clearings where figures danced in circles that made my eyes water to look at. Clara walked beside me, her cold hand on my shoulder, her familiar voice offering comfort. I know this is frightening, my dear boy, but it will pass. The fear, the uncertainty, the attachment to your human form. It will all fade, and what remains will be stronger, purer, eternal. My father appeared on my other side, his hollow eyes somehow warm with paternal pride. You're being so brave. Adrian, braver than I was. I fought. I resisted. I made it harder for everyone. But you understand. You accept. You embrace your destiny. We walked for what felt like hours, deeper and deeper into the forest, until we reached a clearing I had never seen before, a perfect circle where no trees grew, where the grass was silver in the moonlight, where stones older than memory formed intricate patterns on the ground. In the center of the clearing stood an altar, not made by human hands, carved from a single piece of black stone that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Around the altar, hundreds of figures stood in concentric circles, all pale, all beautiful, all watching me with those endless black eyes. This is the heart, Lireleth explained, leading me toward the altar, the source of our power, the wellspring of our existence. Here, you will be transformed. Here, you will become one of us. Here, you will find your true home. As we approached the altar, I could see symbols carved into its surface, symbols that hurt to look at directly, that seemed to move and shift when I wasn't focusing on them. The stone itself seemed alive, pulsing with a heartbeat that matched my own. Lie down, Adrian, Lireleth instructed, her voice gentle but commanding. Let the transformation begin. Let yourself be reborn. I climbed onto the altar. The stone was warm against my back, warmer than it should have been, and as I lay there, staring up at the star-filled sky, I felt strangely peaceful, ready. Clara leaned over me, her pale face framed by the night sky, her smile sad and proud and loving. Close your eyes, my dear boy, and when you open them, you'll be home, truly home forever. I closed my eyes, felt hands, dozens of hands, hundreds of hands, touching me, holding me, welcoming me. I felt the warmth spreading through my body, changing me, transforming me, remaking me from the inside out. The pain, when it came, was indescribable, like being torn apart at the molecular level, like every cell in my body was being rewritten, restructured, reborn. I screamed, but the sound that came out wasn't human, wasn't anything that should have come from a human throat. But then, as quickly as it had begun, the pain stopped, and what replaced it was transcendent. I felt power flowing through me. Ancient power, primal power, power that connected me to the earth, to the forest, to the very foundation of existence. I opened my eyes, and the world looked different. Everything was sharper, clearer, more vivid. I could see colors that didn't have names, could hear sounds that human ears couldn't detect, could feel the life force of every creature in the forest. I sat up, looked down at my hands. They were pale now, glowing with that same inner light. When I touched my face, my skin felt different, smoother, colder, eternal. "Welcome to the family, Adrian," Lireleth said, her voice now clear as crystal, every word carrying layers of meaning I could suddenly understand. "Welcome home." I stood and marveled at how different everything felt, how much stronger I was, how much more alive. The figures around the clearing, my new family, they all smiled, welcoming me, accepting me, loving me. Clara embraced me, and for the first time since her death, I felt complete, whole, like a piece of me that had been missing my entire life had finally been found. "I'm so proud of you, Adrian," she whispered. "So proud that you chose to join us. So proud that you embraced your destiny." My father was there too, and when he hugged me, I felt the love he had never been able to show when he was alive, when he was human, when he was limited by mortal emotions and mortal fears. "This is what I wanted for you, son. This is why I went willingly when my time came, so that someday you could join us, so that our family could be together forever." I looked around the clearing, at all the faces, all the souls who had found their way home, and I understood. This wasn't death. This wasn't an ending. This was transformation, evolution, becoming more than human, becoming eternal. But even as I felt this overwhelming sense of belonging, of completion, there was something else, something darker stirring in the depths of my transformed consciousness. A hunger. It started as a whisper, a gentle gnawing at the edges of my awareness, but it grew stronger with each passing moment, more insistent, more demanding. I could feel it spreading through my new form like poison, like fire, like life itself. "What is this?" I asked, my voice echoing strangely in the clearing, carrying harmonics that human vocal cords could never produce. Lireleth's smile widened, and I saw something in her expression that chilled me. Anticipation, excitement, predatory satisfaction. "That, dear Adrian, is the awakening, the first stirring of your true nature. The hunger that drives us, sustains us, defines us." Around the clearing, the other figures nodded, their black eyes gleaming with understanding, with memory, with the same terrible hunger I was beginning to feel. Hunger for what? I whispered, though part of me already knew, already understood what these creatures, what I needed to survive. Life force. Adrian, the essence that flows through all living things, the spark that separates the living from the dead, the energy that mortals call soul. Clara stepped forward, her pale hand resting on my shoulder, her touch both comforting and terrifying. "In your human form, you consumed food, water, air, to sustain your physical body. But now you require something more, something deeper, something that can only be taken from a living." The hunger intensified, gnawing at me, demanding satisfaction. I could feel my new senses expanding, reaching out, searching for sources of life, for prey. The town. I breathed, understanding flooding through me like ice water. Millbrook, the people, are protected by the ancient agreements. Lireleth assured me, though her smile suggested those protections weren't absolute. As long as the balance is maintained, as long as we are fed, they remain safe. Fed on what? I demanded, though the hunger was making it hard to think, hard to focus on anything but the desperate need growing inside me. Travelers. Adrian, hikers who wander too deep into our domain, campers who ignore the warning signs, outsiders who don't belong to the protected bloodlines. They provide what we need, what you need. She gestured toward the edge of the clearing, and I saw them, 3 figures huddled together in terror, bound with vines that seemed to move on their own. A young couple, maybe in their 20s, and an older man, all very much alive, all radiating the life force that my new nature craved. Your first feeding. Adrian, your initiation into our ways. Choose one, and learn what it means to truly live. The hunger roared inside me, overwhelming, undeniable. The 3 prisoners looked at me with such fear, such desperate hope, begging silently for mercy, for salvation, for anything but what they somehow knew was coming. I tried to resist, tried to hold onto the last fragments of my humanity. But the hunger was stronger, more primal, more fundamental than any human emotion or moral constraint. I can't, I whispered, even as my feet carried me toward the terrified captives. I won't. You will. Clara said gently, lovingly. Because you must, because it's your nature now, because denying what you are will only cause more suffering, for you and for them. The older man, maybe 60, with kind eyes and graying hair, he looked at me with such profound sadness, as if he understood what I was struggling with, what I was becoming. It's okay, son, he whispered, his voice barely audible. I've lived a good life, had a good run. If it has to be someone, let it be me. His acceptance, his sacrifice, it broke something inside me. The last wall holding back the hunger. The final barrier between my human past and my inhuman future. I reached out, my pale hand touching his forehead, and felt a connection for him. Felt his life force flowing into me like warm honey, like liquid sunlight, like everything beautiful and terrible in the world. The sensation was indescribable, better than any human pleasure, more satisfying than any human need. I could feel his memories, his experiences, his love for his family, his pride in his children, his satisfaction with a life well lived, all of it flowing into me, becoming part of me, sustaining me. When it was over, when the last spark of his essence had been absorbed, his body simply faded, dissolved into motes of light that scattered on the wind, leaving no trace, no evidence, nothing but the memory of a kind man who had chosen to die so that others might be spared. The hunger was satisfied for now, but I could already feel it stirring again, patient but persistent, a constant reminder of what I had become, what I would need to do to survive. How do you feel? Lireleth asked, her voice filled with maternal pride, maternal love. Alive, I admitted, hating myself for the truth of it, more alive than I've ever felt. And this is just the beginning. Adrian, as you grow stronger, as you learn to harness your new abilities, the experiences will become even more intense, even more fulfilling. She gestured toward the remaining prisoners, and I could see the hunger in her eyes, the same need I was feeling, the same terrible desire. Would you like to continue, or shall we save these for another night? I looked at the young couple, clinging to each other, whispering prayers, making promises they would never have the chance to keep, and I felt nothing, no sympathy, no remorse, no human connection at all. Another night. I said, not out of mercy, but because I wanted to savor this new sensation, to understand it fully before experiencing it again. Lireleth nodded approvingly, and with a gesture, the remaining prisoners were led away, back into the darkness, back to whatever holding place existed for those marked for feeding. Come, she said, taking my arm. Let me show you your new home, your new domain, your new purpose. She led me deeper into the forest, through groves that existed in pockets of reality separate from the normal world, past streams that flowed uphill and pools that reflected skies from other dimensions, past creatures that had no names in any human language. This is the between, she explained as we walked, the space that exists parallel to your former world, connected to it, but separate from it, governed by older laws, sustained by older powers. We came to a massive tree, larger than any redwood, its trunk so wide it could have housed a cathedral, its branches reaching so high they seemed to touch the stars themselves. The heart tree, Lireleth whispered reverently, the source of our power, the anchor that keeps the between stable, the mother that birthed our kind. As we approached, I could feel the power radiating from the ancient bark, could hear whispers and languages that predated human speech, could see faces in the grain of the wood, thousands of faces, all the souls that had been absorbed over the centuries. Place your hand upon the bark. Adrian, let it know you. Let it accept you. Let it welcome you home. I pressed my palm against the rough surface and immediately felt the connection, the vast network of consciousness that linked all of our kind, collective memory, the shared purpose, the eternal hunger that bound us together. Visions flooded my mind, images of the first settlers, the indigenous people who had tried to warn them, the bargains made in desperation, the cycles of feeding and protection that had sustained both predator and prey for generations. I saw Clara as she really was, not the kind of grandmother of my memories, but a creature of ancient power who had shaped my entire life, guided my development, prepared me for this moment with surgical precision. I saw my father, torn between human love and inhuman nature, choosing to go willingly not out of despair but out of hope, hope that his sacrifice would secure my future, would ensure I would join him in this eternal existence. I saw myself, not as I believed I was, but as I truly was, a vessel prepared from birth, a candidate, selected by careful breeding and patient cultivation, a successor groomed to take my place in the ancient hierarchy. When the visions ended, when the connection stabilized, I understood everything, my purpose, my nature, my destiny. I am the new guardian. I whispered, the words coming from some deep knowledge I hadn't known I possessed. Yes, Lyreleth confirmed. Clara's successor, the one who will watch over the bloodlines, who will select the candidates, who will maintain the balance between our world and theirs. She led me to a dwelling carved into the base of the heart tree, a space that was larger inside than physics should have allowed, furnished with objects that hurt to look at directly, but somehow felt perfectly familiar. This was Clara's home for 70 years, Adrian, and now it is yours, your sanctuary, your base of operations, your throne room. I moved through the space, touching objects that resonated with power, books written in languages that changed as I watched, mirrors that reflected not my image but my essence, chairs carved from wood that still lived and grew. What are my duties? I asked, though I was beginning to understand. Watching. Adrian, always watching. The bloodlines must be maintained, the candidates must be identified, the feeding cycles must be managed, the balance must be preserved. She showed me a collection of journals, thousands of them, documenting centuries of careful record-keeping, genealogies stretching back to the first settlers, notes on personality traits, psychological profiles, feeding schedules. Every 20 to 30 years, someone from the protected bloodlines must be brought across, must join us, must take their place in the eternal hierarchy. It is your job to choose who, when, how. I opened one of the journals, Clara's handwriting neat and precise, documenting my entire life, every milestone, every decision, every moment that had led me to this clearing, this altar, this transformation. She knew. I breathed. She knew from the beginning that it would be me. You were perfect, Adrian, intelligent enough to understand, empathetic enough to accept, strong enough to resist the madness that claims so many during transformation. Clara chose well. I read through the entries, seeing my life from an outside perspective, understanding how carefully orchestrated every event had been. The job at the Herald wasn't coincidence. It was positioning, giving me access to the historical records, letting me discover the truth, gradually rather than all at once. Even Juniper, my friend and colleague, her concern and kindness, was that real, or was she part of the plan too? Juniper is human. Adrian, genuinely human, and genuinely concerned about you. Not everyone in your life was manipulation. Some connections were real, even if they were temporary. There was comfort in that, knowing that at least some of my human relationships had been authentic, even if they were now part of a past I could never return to. What about the others, the ones who don't get chosen, the ones from the bloodlines who live normal lives? They serve their purpose. Adrian, they breed, they maintain the genetic lines, they keep the town stable and prosperous, and when their time comes, they pass on the stories, the warnings, the preparation for the next generation. I spent hours exploring my new domain, learning about the between, understanding the complex ecosystem that existed parallel to the human world. It was beautiful in ways that human perception couldn't grasp, terrible in ways that human imagination couldn't conceive. There were others like me, guardians of other territories, other towns, other feeding grounds, a vast network of predators and prey that stretched across the continent, across the world, managing human populations like livestock, like crops to be harvested. How many? I asked, overwhelmed by the scope of it all. Thousands. Adrian, tens of thousands. We have been here since before your species learned to make fire. We have guided your development, your evolution, your expansion. You exist because we allow it. You thrive because we permit it. The revelation should have horrified me, should have triggered some vestige of human loyalty, human defiance, but instead, I felt only acceptance, understanding, even pride. Pride in being part of something so ancient, so powerful, so eternal. Days passed, or what passed for days in the between. Time moved differently here, flowed in patterns that had nothing to do with solar cycles or human schedules. I learned my new abilities, practiced with my enhanced senses, studied the journals, absorbed centuries of accumulated wisdom. The hunger returned regularly, requiring feeding, requiring sustenance. Lireleth brought me travelers, hikers, campers, always outsiders, always those who wouldn't be missed, always those who had wandered too deep into places they didn't belong. With each feeding, I grew stronger, more attuned to the between, more connected to the vast network of consciousness that linked our kind. I began to understand why Clara had seemed so distant in her final years, so focused on watching, on waiting. She hadn't been withdrawing from life. She had been operating on a completely different level of existence. "It's time for your first assignment, Adrian," Lireleth announced one evening. Though evening was a relative concept in a place where the sky showed aurora instead of sunset. She handed me a file, detailed genealogical charts, psychological profiles, surveillance notes, all focused on a family in Millbrook, the Hendersons, longtime residents with roots going back to the original settlers. Their youngest daughter, Rebecca, she's showing the signs, the sensitivity, potential. She needs guidance, preparation, cultivation. I studied the file. Rebecca Henderson, 19 years old, studying at the community college, works part-time at the library, lives with her parents on Maple Street, just 3 blocks from my former home. What kind of guidance? I asked, though I was beginning to understand. The same kind Clara gave you, Adrian, the same careful cultivation, the same patient preparation. She needs to learn the rules, needs to understand the boundaries, needs to be kept safe until her time comes. The file contained photographs. Rebecca was beautiful in that wholesome, small-town way, blonde hair, blue eyes, the kind of innocence that was becoming increasingly rare, the kind of purity that our kind needed. When? Soon, Adrian, within the next few years, the cycles are accelerating. The old agreements are weakening. We need fresh blood, young souls, untainted by too much exposure to our realm. I felt a stirring of something, not quite human emotion, but something similar: anticipation, excitement, the same feeling a gardener might have when selecting seeds for the next season's crop. How do I approach her? Carefully, subtly. She must not know what she's being prepared for. Not until the very end. Not until she's ready to make the choice. Clara spent 16 years cultivating you. Adrian, this girl may require similar patience. Lireleth handed me additional files, backup candidates, alternate options, contingency plans. The level of detail was staggering. Every family in Millbrook had been cataloged, assessed, rated for potential. What about the town, about Juniper, about the people I knew? They continue their lives. Adrian, ignorant and content, protected by the agreements your transformation has renewed. Juniper will wonder what happened to you. Will file a missing person report. Will eventually move on. Life continues. There was a coldness in that assessment, a casual dismissal of human attachment that should have bothered me. But didn't. My human connections were fading, becoming distant memories, replaced by something larger, more important, more eternal. I understand. I said and meant it. When do I begin? Tonight, Adrian. Return to the human world. Establish your cover story. Begin your new role as guardian, as shepherd, as selector of the chosen. She gave me clothing modern normal, designed to help me blend in, to appear human despite the fundamental changes that had occurred. The fabric felt strange against my transformed skin, like wearing a costume, playing a role. Remember, you are no longer Adrian the human. You are Adrian the guardian. Your loyalty is to the between, to your kind, to the eternal cycles that maintain the balance. Everything else is secondary. I nodded, understanding the weight of responsibility settling on my shoulders, the burden of choosing who would live normal lives and who would be selected for transformation, who would remain human and who would join the eternal family. The journey back to Millbrook took place through paths that existed between dimensions, shortcuts through reality that compressed miles into steps. When I emerged from the forest, I was standing in my own backyard, at the gate I had passed through what felt like a lifetime ago. My house looked exactly the same, but I could see it differently now, could perceive the layers of protection woven into its foundation, the wards Clara had maintained for decades, the invisible barriers that had kept me safe during my preparation. I went inside, moving through familiar rooms that now felt like museums, displays of a life I had once lived, artifacts of a person I had once been. Everything was exactly as I had left it, but I was no longer the same person who had lived here. In Clara's room, I found additional journals, more detailed records, notes she had kept private even from Lilith, personal observations about my development, her hopes, her fears, her love for the boy she was preparing for sacrifice. My dearest Adrian. One entry read, "Today you turned 16, so strong, so pure, so ready. I pray the transformation will be gentle with you, that you will retain enough of yourself to remember why this was necessary, to understand the love that guided every choice I made." I read through years of entries, seeing my life through her eyes, understanding the depth of her affection, the pain she felt at having to prepare me for this fate, the pride she took in my development, the hope she held for my future. "You are my greatest work." Another entry said, "My masterpiece, the perfect candidate, strong enough to survive, pure enough to serve, intelligent enough to guide the next generation. I have given you everything you need. Now I must trust that you will choose correctly when your time comes." The love was real, even if it was different from human love, even if it was filtered through inhuman perspective and eternal priorities. Clara had genuinely cared for me, had wanted what was best for me, according to her understanding of what that meant. I closed the journals, understanding finally that there were no villains in this story, no evil manipulators, only different species with different needs, different perspectives, different definitions of love and family and home. The next morning, I walked into town, ready to begin my new role, my new purpose, my new existence as guardian of the bloodlines, selector of the chosen, shepherd of the human flock. Millbrook looked exactly the same, but I could see it differently now, could perceive the layers of protection, the careful management, the subtle influences that had shaped its development for over a century. Every street, every building, every family was part of a larger pattern, a carefully maintained ecosystem. The Herald office was exactly as I had left it. Juniper was at her desk, typing, focused. She looked up when I entered, relief flooding her face. "Adrian, thank God. Where have you been? I was so worried. You just disappeared. No one knew what happened to you." I manufactured a smile, drew upon memories of human interaction, played the role I needed to play. "Sorry, Juniper, family emergency. Had to go out of town suddenly. Didn't have time to call." She studied my face, and for a moment I wondered if she could see the changes, if my transformation was visible to those who knew me well. But her expression showed only relief, concern, human emotion that I could remember but no longer truly feel. "You look different. Adrian, older somehow, more mature. Are you okay?" "I'm fine, just processing some family stuff, learning things about Clara, about our history. It's been educational." That was true enough, even if the education had been far more extensive than she could imagine. "Well, I'm glad you're back. The office hasn't been the same without you, and there have been some strange reports coming in. Missing hikers, unusual animal behavior, the usual small-town mysteries." I felt a flicker of interest, of professional curiosity. These reports, they were likely connected to feeding activities, to the movements of my kind through the forest, information I would need to monitor, to manage. "Tell me more," I said, settling into my old chair, preparing to resume my old role while fulfilling my new purpose. Over the following weeks, I established my new routine, working at the Herald during the day, investigating reports that might compromise the between, managing information flow, ensuring that human curiosity didn't lead them too close to dangerous truths. At night, I returned to my true home, to the between, to study the files, to plan the cultivation of new candidates, to feed when necessary, to maintain the balance between worlds. Rebecca Henderson became my primary focus. I studied her patterns, her interests, her vulnerabilities, her potential. She was perfect, young, innocent, sensitive to the supernatural. Exactly what our kind needed for the next generation. I began the slow process of introduction, of preparation, appearing in places she frequented, the library, coffee shop, the park where she liked to read. Always casual, always accidental, always friendly, but not forward. Adrian Wright, she said one afternoon at the library, recognizing me from the Herald. You write those articles about local history. I love reading them, especially the ones about the early settlers. Thank you, Rebecca. I enjoy researching the old stories, the forgotten legends. There's so much history in this little town that people don't know about. She was interested, curious, exactly the kind of mind that would be receptive to preparation, to cultivation, to guidance. Have you ever heard any stories about the woods, about strange things that happen there? Her expression shifted slightly, a flicker of recognition, of inherited memory, the bloodline responding to stimuli it had been bred to recognize. My grandmother used to tell stories, warnings about staying away from certain areas, rules about not going out after dark. I always thought they were just, superstition. Maybe our grandmothers knew things we've forgotten. Maybe the old warnings exist for reasons we don't understand anymore. I was planting seeds, laying groundwork, beginning the same process Clara had used with me. The irony wasn't lost on me. I was becoming the thing that had shaped my life, the guardian, the cultivator, the shepherd. Would you like to hear some of the stories I've collected, some of the old legends, the forgotten warnings? Her eyes lit up with interest, with curiosity, with the same fascination that had drawn me to Clara's stories. The bloodline was responding, recognizing its destiny, accepting its preparation. I'd love to. And so it began, the patient cultivation, the careful guidance, the systematic preparation of the next candidate. I met with Rebecca regularly, sharing stories, teaching lessons, establishing trust, building the foundation for eventual revelation. She was an excellent student, absorbing the lore, respecting the warnings, developing the proper fear and reverence for the forest, for the rules, for the boundaries that kept humans safe. Months passed, seasons changed, and Rebecca grew stronger, more prepared, more ready for what was coming. I watched her development with the same pride Clara must have felt watching mine, the satisfaction of a job well done, of a candidate properly cultivated. But there were challenges, complications. Other guardians in nearby territories were reporting problems, resistance, candidates who refused to call, bloodlines that were becoming diluted, modern skepticism that made preparation more difficult. The old ways are failing. Adrian, Lyra left warned during one of our meetings in the between. Humans are becoming too disconnected, too rational, too resistant to supernatural influence. She showed me reports from other territories, guardians struggling to maintain their feeding cycles, candidates who rejected transformation, communities that were beginning to question disappearances. What does this mean for U.S., for Millbrook? It means we may need to accelerate timelines. Adrian, to adapt our methods, to ensure continuity before the old systems break down entirely. I thought about Rebecca, about her progress, about whether she was ready for earlier selection than originally planned. The girl was responding well to preparation, but she was still young, still innocent, still unaware of what was coming. How much time do we have? Years, maybe decades, but not the centuries we once enjoyed. The world is changing, Adrian, and we must change with it, or risk extinction. The weight of responsibility grew heavier, the burden of ensuring the survival of our kind, of maintaining the delicate balance that had sustained both predator and prey for generations. I returned to my human role with renewed focus, accelerating Rebecca's preparation, introducing more advanced concepts, testing her readiness, pushing her development faster than might be ideal, but as fast as might be necessary. Adrian, I've been having dreams. She told me during one of our meetings. Strange dreams about the forest, about lights, about voices calling my name. The bloodline was awakening, responding to proximity to our kind, developing the sensitivity that would make transformation possible. What kind of dreams? Rebecca, beautiful, but frightening. I'm standing at the edge of the woods, and there are lights dancing between the trees, and voices, familiar voices, calling me home. She was almost ready, almost prepared, almost at the point where revelation could begin, where the final phase of cultivation could commence. Have you told anyone else about these dreams? No, they think I was crazy. But you believe me, don't you? Adrian, you understand. I understand completely. Rebecca, and when you're ready, when the time is right, I'll help you understand too. The promise was made, the commitment established, the countdown begun. But even as I prepared to guide another innocent soul toward transformation, toward eternal servitude, toward the same fate I had embraced, I felt something stirring in the depths of my transformed consciousness. Not regret, not exactly, but something like it, a recognition of what was being lost, what was being sacrificed, what was being destroyed in the name of survival and balance and eternal hierarchy. Rebecca trusted me, looked up to me, saw me as a friend, a guide, protector, and I was all of those things in my way, according to my nature, by the standards of my kind. But I was also her executioner, her predator, her doom. The hunger stirred, patient but persistent, reminding me of what I was, what I needed, what I served. There was no room for human sentiment in the between, no space for mortal compassion in an eternal consciousness. I was the guardian, the selector, the shepherd of the flock, and Rebecca Henderson was my next lamb to guide towards slaughter. The choice had been made long before either of us was born, written into bloodlines and ancient agreements and cycles that predated civilization. There was no escape, no alternative, no mercy. Only duty, only hunger, only the eternal dance between predator and prey that kept the darkness fed and the balance maintained. 3 nights later, as I stood at my fence watching the lights dance between the trees, listening to the whispers of my transformed family calling from the between, I made a decision. Rebecca Henderson would join us before the month was out, ready or not, willing or not. The cycles demanded it, the hunger required it, and I would deliver her, just as Clara had delivered me, just as someone someday would deliver the next candidate, forever and ever, world without end. The lights pulsed brighter, welcoming, approving, and I smiled, my pale face reflecting their ethereal glow, my black eyes seeing futures that stretched beyond human comprehension. This was my purpose, my destiny, my eternal role in the ancient hierarchy, and I embraced it, completely, finally, forever. The transformation was complete, the guardian awakened, the cycle continued. And in the between, where time moved differently and love meant sacrifice and family meant feeding, Clara smiled, proud of the monster she had created, satisfied with the successor she had prepared. The woods had their new keeper, the bloodlines had their new shepherd, and Rebecca Henderson, sweet, innocent, trusting Rebecca Henderson, had her appointment with destiny. Tomorrow, I would begin the final phase of her preparation. Tonight, I would savor the hunger and plan her homecoming. Thank you so much for watching this terrifying journey into the darkness that lurks just beyond our understanding. If this story sent chills down your spine or made you question what might be watching from the tree line, please hit that subscribe button right now and ring the notification bell so you never miss our spine-tingling content. What did you think of Adrian's transformation? Did you see it coming, or were you shocked by the revelation about Clara and the family bloodline? Let me know in the comments below. I read every single one and love hearing your theories and reactions. Also, tell me what kind of horror stories you want to see next. Are you interested in more forest folklore, urban legends, haunted locations, supernatural family curses, or something completely different? Your suggestions help me choose which terrifying tales to share next. If you enjoyed this deep dive into generational horror and ancient agreements, you might also love our videos about cursed bloodlines, supernatural guardians, and the dark secrets that small towns keep hidden. Check out the playlist in the description. Don't forget to give this video a thumbs up if it kept you on the edge of your seat, and share it with friends who love a good scare. But maybe warn them first. This one goes deep into some pretty dark territory. What time are you watching this? Are you brave enough to listen to forest horror stories in the middle of the night? Or are you being smart and waiting for daylight? Let me know in the comments. Until next time, keep your doors locked, your curtains drawn, and remember, some family traditions are darker than they appear, and some rules exist for reasons we're better off not knowing. Sweet dreams, and whatever you do, don't go into the woods alone.